Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a deeply personal, frankly heartbreaking true story that also happens to serve as an absolute masterclass on protecting your family's legacy. We're examining an event we're calling the 8:47 a.m. betrayal. It's a real-life case study on what actually happens when the rules of joint bank accounts clash head-on with a carefully written will.
2 hours and 35 minutes. Now, that's a wildly specific and honestly staggering gap of time. In the story we're exploring today, this represents the exact window between a father's last breath and a devastating financial betrayal. So let's look at exactly how this unfolded, minute by minute.
Section 1. The timeline of a tragedy. So, our story comes from a 41-year-old man named David. His 73-year-old father, Leonard, had just passed away from congestive heart failure. This happened at exactly 6:12 a.m. on a quiet Tuesday morning. Now, David stayed for about an hour holding his dad's hand in the hospital room before finally driving home in that heavy silence of sudden grief at 7:12 a.m. But, get this, by 8:47 a.m., while David was sitting at his kitchen table mourning, his stepmother of 11 years, Sandra, was already visiting 3 separate bank branches. The gears of a massive financial maneuver were already turning before the morning was even over.
Section 2. The banker's warning call. So 4 days pass. David is carrying his late father's cell phone when it suddenly rings on a Saturday morning. On the other end is a banker named Thomas Reed, and he's reporting some highly unusual account activity that took place on the exact morning of Leonard's death. Reed tells David, and I quote, "The withdrawals were made by a joint account holder, but the amounts exceeded the threshold that triggers our notification protocol. That joint account holder was Sandra, and the amount? A staggering $200,000, all withdrawn in multiple cashier's checks." Section 3. The careful engineer's will.
To really understand why this is so legally and emotionally shocking, you have to know who Leonard was. He worked as a civil engineer for 40 years. He was the guy meticulously calculating load tolerances for bridges to ensure they could hold far more weight than necessary. And he applied that exact same structural precision to his estate planning, working with a lawyer of 20 years. His clearly documented intent was incredibly fair and clean. The shared house goes to Sandra, but his investment accounts, which were his separate property established well before the marriage, were to be divided equally among David and his 2 sisters. Yet, evidently deciding her share under the will just wasn't enough, Sandra unilaterally took $200,000 of those joint funds.
Section 4. The legal gray area.
After hanging up with the bank, David frantically calls his father's lawyer, Gerald Park, right from his car. And it's here that he discovers a truly terrifying legal loophole. Joint account holder rights actually give a person the legal authority to withdraw funds at any time, even right after the other holder's death. So legally speaking, the moment Sandra took that money, she had the right to access it. But, and this is a massive but, there is the concept of estate fraud. If those funds were withdrawn specifically to avoid the estate process and actively prevent the money from being distributed according to a valid will, well, that crosses a major legal line.
Listen to what Gerald Park told David. That timing tells the story, David. And think about it, 2 hours after his death, before his body had even left the hospital room. The sheer speed of those withdrawals completely proves it wasn't some spontaneous reaction to sudden grief. No, it was premeditation.
Section 5. Proving the fraudulent intent. Over the next 6 months, Gerald Park didn't just walk into court and make accusations. He methodically constructed a completely bulletproof case. First, he secured the bank records proving the exact timeline of those morning withdrawals. Then, phone records revealed Sandra having very specific calls with a financial advisor in the week before Leonard died. Finally, they brought in a document examiner who uncovered a clear pattern of quiet fund transfers in Leonard's final weeks. Joint funds had been subtly moved into positions that Sandra could access unilaterally. This wasn't sudden grief, guys. This was the work of someone who had been calculating this move for months.
Now, Sandra's lawyer pushed back hard, arguing that her joint account holder rights fully protected her actions. But the judge agreed with Gerald. Joint rights absolutely do not extend to deliberately defrauding an estate. The judge ordered the full $200,000 to be returned to the estate, to be distributed exactly as Leonard had intended when he meticulously drafted his will.
Building things that last. Following the settlement, David visited the house, which was now Sandra's, exactly as the will had specified. Standing in his father's engineering study, surrounded by framed blueprints of bridges, David took down one specific 20-year-old graduation photo of him, his dad, and his sisters.
In that moment, he realized that his father's precise, meticulous planning was the ultimate bridge. It held the weight. He truly built things that last.
Section 6. Protecting your family's legacy. Okay, we're shifting gears now from this gripping narrative to how you can master your own situation. Because this story isn't just a fascinating legal drama, it's a critical warning and a direct guide for why this matters for your own family right now. First, know your parents' finances. Not to control them, but to protect them. Second, thoroughly understand the difference between joint assets and estate assets, and what that actually means legally. Third, keep all the legal documents organized and accessible. And finally, have the hard conversation early. Because trust me, it is always earlier than you think. You need to know enough to ask the right questions if a banker like Thomas Reed ever calls you, and you need to have a lawyer like Gerald Park ready to answer.
So I want to leave you with this. Do you know what your family's documents actually say? Or are you leaving a 2-hour window for someone else to rewrite your legacy? Nobody can account for absolutely everything in life, but you can build your estate like a well-engineered bridge, designed to hold the weight when it matters the most. Take the time to review your plans, protect what was built for you, and ensure your family's foundation is truly secure.